I've just been in the garden feeling a little bit windswept, so I've come indoors for a nice cup of tea and a read of the latest edition of Homes and Antiques. It's got an article on spending 48 hours in the town of Lewes in East Sussex. And guess what? I just spent 24 hours in Lewes and it was absolutely amazing. Now, if you love all things flower arranging, a bit of crafting and a lot of charity shop shopping, you're in the right place. And I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel. All you need to do is to tap the button in red, mark subscribe, and that means next time you open the YouTube app on your phone, your tablet or your computer, one of my videos will be waiting for you. So naturally enough, Homes and Antiques gave lots of advice on where to go antique shopping. The Lewes Flea Market, the Lewes Antique Centre, Pastoral Antiques, the 5th Century Bookshop, and it goes on and on. So the first thing I think you need to do is decide whether you want to work your way through town west of Waitrose or go east of Waitrose. On the west side, you've got Lewes Castle. On the east side, you go over the bridge into Cliff High Street, and that's where I found the cluster of antique shops. But this isn't a video about antique shopping, it's a video about the charity shops. So let's get started. You know what it's like when you visit a new town for the first time. You have to orientate yourself, find out where to park the car and where you can have a spot of lunch, and see whether you can find the key landmarks. So I've gone on to Google Maps to find out where the charity shops are, and by my calculation I think there are 10 charity shops. I would say most of them are located on the west side of Waitrose, the upmarket supermarket, with just 3 on the east side of Waitrose, but there was a larger cluster of antique shops on Cliff High Street. We actually stayed in Lewes for less than 12 hours. We were here so we could go and visit Charleston Farmhouse, the home of Vanessa Bell and her partner Duncan Grant. So if you're a member of my YouTube membership group, I will post some video footage and some photographs of our visit to Charleston at the end of this video. As you can see, Lewes is a charming historic town with a castle on the hill. Now, if you are one of my American viewers, are you familiar with the name Tom Paine? He was actually born in Norfolk in 1737 and died in 1809, but he did spend a period of time in Lewes. He was considered to be the father of British radicalism and was actually a key influencer in the American War of Independence. Lewes also has connections with Virginia Woolf, the famous writer, and this was one of her properties, the Roundhouse, which actually is the base of a windmill. It's located on Pipe Passage, and you'll see as I take you through some of the streets in town, there are lots of these little narrow walkways which are known locally as Twittens, Twittens. And here on the High Street is Bull House, the home of Tom Paine from 1768 to 1774. Lewes is quite near Glyndebourne, the home of the summer season of operas. But let's get on to the charity shops. I'm always attracted to a bit of red and white transfer wear, and this is the Denmark pattern made by Furnivall's. The factory closed in 1968 and was bought out by Wedgwood. Now, to be honest, I didn't find much to buy in Lewes. As you know, I'm always on the lookout for bric-a-brac and flower arranging paraphernalia. But if you're in the market for clothing, head to St Peter and St James's Hospice on the High Street. There were beautiful items in there. Do you see the green building and the white one to the right of it? A pair of charity shops. The first one was the Sussex Community Development Association, a tiny shop, and there were so many people in there I could barely look at the displays. But my eye was caught by this Judith Miller book. It's always so lovely to flick through a book and just see whether you can catch your eye. Did I remember having that as a child, or have I actually bought something similar recently? Our overnight stay in Lewes just wasn't long enough, and as per the advice in my Homes and Antiques magazine, I really do wish we'd stayed 48 hours. I bought just two things while we were away, and the first one was this 75p little glass cup. A pretty little piece, but to be honest, I think mainly I bought it because I hadn't found anything else to buy. So I've decided to put this little cup to good use, and you see the little china cup alongside. That's something that I bought from the bric-a-brac stall at a flower festival I visited last year, and if you love flower festivals, don't forget to check out my playlist. Now what I'm going to do is to recycle this candle. My sister made it for me, and the wick never lit properly, and I wasn't able to enjoy the scent of the candle, so I'm putting it into my air fryer on a couple of minutes at 200 degrees just to start to melt the wax so I can re-pour it. And I've bought wicks previously from a kit that I got on Amazon, which includes that little metal plate there which holds the wick upright. And if you're interested in sourcing candle making supplies, I'll leave a link to what I used in the description underneath this video. You can see here I was too impatient to let the wax melt completely, so I did it in a couple of stages using my tongs. I did spill a bit of wax, but once it's dry, it's really easy to scrape off. Lewes is located halfway between Royal Tunbridge Wells and Brighton, so if you ever do get the chance to come down to the southeast of England, I would highly recommend staying in the area and really enjoying everything there is to do locally. Next stop was Charlotte's Dragon. I wasn't familiar with this particular charity, and this one had more of a junk shop vibe to it, and it sold actually loads of LPs if that's your thing. As ever, I like to take a really good look in the window first to see whether anything catches my eye, and then go indoors. Check out this view. We stayed in an Airbnb overnight with a view down to the charity shop. Perfect location. So this is the cancer research. They had a lovely window display, but things that were in the window were for me too highly priced. This little rose bowl here, I think that says £35 on the label. I bought one very similar to that, perhaps it was even larger, for £5 in Rochester a year or so ago. If you'd like to find out more about that shopping trip, don't forget to check out my charity shop playlist, and I'll leave a link to that in the description underneath this video. And look, a little bit of Noritake. I'm a great reader and often borrow books from the library, but also I do check out the shelves at the charity shop too. Peter James is one of my favourite authors. His books are set in Brighton, where I used to live as a teenager, and his mother is called Cordelia James. She has a number of high-class boutiques. I think she's particularly known for leather gloves and silk scarves. We're back at the second outlet for the St Peter and St James's Hospice. This is pretty much directly opposite Waitrose and the public car park alongside. So the other shop was for clothing, and this was for general bric-a-brac and books. Let me know in the comments whether anything in the front window grabs your eye. I quite like the look of those glassware there with the red hearts. I think this might be German crystal, but quite often has a bird on the front. If you know, let me know in the comments. As you can see, there are loads of books here, but also little display areas with the more high quality items. And out on the open display tables, my eye was caught by this little jug. I think it was either £5 or £7. I've bought the exact same one, which I got from a car boot fair for about 50p. This platter here is the Game Birds, the pheasant by Johnson Brothers, which was produced between 1953 and 1976. The set also included plates showing quail, partridge and grouse. And wait for it, I found something flower arranging related. A little earthenware basket from the Estonia range. This was made by the Moira Pottery, who were famous for their utilitarian household earthenware. And lying on the floor, a metal door wreath. This is ringing some bells for me. Do you watch Linda Varta? here on YouTube. I think she's got the exact same door wreath on her front door on the cottage on the hill. I'm thinking about it, but at £10, I just thought it was too pricey. But guess what? I went back the following morning and bought it. Now, I've kept this wreath out on my patio table for a couple of weeks. I was wondering whether it might rust down a little bit, but it didn't. I also thought I might be able to use a pair of pliers just to give some shape to the leaves, which appear to be very flat. But I couldn't do that either. It was very stiff metal. So I've paid a whopping £10. I'm going to dress up my wreath a little bit. I'm wondering whether I could give it a shush of spray paint. I'm not sure whether the silver colour here is something someone's added on or how that was originally manufactured. But what I am going to do is to touch every single one of the flowers and leaves on the wreath just to give it a bit more of a 3D quality, give it a little bit of life. And just behind the hospice shop was Racee. This is a charity that raises funds for animals. I spotted this Adams blue and white transferware piece. Adams, the pottery, opened in 1657 and closed in 1966 when it joined the Wedgwood Group. You might recognise these Delft-looking pieces if you watched my video when I went to the charity shops in Folkestone. These are just cheap pieces though, probably originally from a supermarket for growing bulbs in. If you walk just over the bridge into Cliff High Street, you'll find the Adams Brewery. Established in 1790, it's said to be the oldest independent brewery in Sussex. I had a quick look around the British Red Cross and found this pretty little red mug made by the Greengate Pottery in Copenhagen. And at this point the battery in my camera died, but I did get some footage later in the evening of the other shops in this part of town, including the cluster of antique shops. Now I definitely want to come back to Lewes, and I think perhaps to spend one day at the charity shops, one day exploring the historic sites, and one day looking round the antique shops. Let me know in the comments whether you've ever visited Lewes, and in particular whether you've ever visited on bonfire night, the 5th of November. I can remember coming here shortly after we moved to Brighton when I was about 13 years old and watching the nighttime display of all the local bonfire societies as they carried huge effigies through the streets. This is the little cafe that Homes and Garden recommended, Café du Jardin. This courtyard is part of Pastoral Antiques on Morling Street. Well worth a visit. As our time in Lewes was so limited, I got up extra early the following morning and had a lovely walk through the town. A Georgian parade of houses here. And I'm heading off to the Anne of Cleves house. Anne of Cleves never lived here. She was one of the wives of King Henry VIII, and when she divorced, she was given this house as part of her settlement. There looked to be a lovely cafe in the garden here, so definitely somewhere to go back to. And check out this street here, another of the Twittons. It was quite steep. I'm not quite sure whether you can catch my panting breath as I walk up the hill. This takes me back up to the high street and towards Pipe Passage, and I had another loop round to take in Virginia Woolf's roundhouse and then another view of the castle. A pretty little path here. Red tulips, purple, Vinca major, Vinca minor, small flowers. Forget-me-nots. Lovely little cottages. Bizarre as it seems, I love getting up early when I'm away for a few days. I love the peace and quiet of exploring on my own. So I've tracked down a couple of places I'd like to go back to if I visit again. This is the flea market, which the article in the Homes and Antiques magazine mentioned. And then across the way is the market halls. And this, I think there's either a Friday market here or more frequently than that, but inside the halls there were some display panels which explained more about Tom Paine and his connections with the American Revolution. Now, if you're a member of my free Facebook group, Flower Start World, I did put some photographs of those panels in the group, so if you'd like to find out more, if you click the link in the box underneath the video, it'll take you straight to my Facebook group. I hope you enjoyed my quick visit to Lewes, and I look forward to seeing you next time.